Hello, and welcome back to The Designated Designer, a podcast for designers and clients alike. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about getting in the car and the process of onboarding your client once they've decided to hand over their keys to you. So let's dive in. I wanted to talk a little bit about the onboarding process for clients in this episode because I feel like it's kind of an oversight in the design industry and in the design business, and it is such an important part of the design process. At least for me, like I literally could not run my business without this onboarding process that I have my clients go through. And honestly, back in the beginning days of when I first started to run my business and dabble in freelance and start to really work with some clients and do some good stuff, my process was kind of just like, client hits me up, I say, okay, let's work together. I had no process, no onboarding, no contracts, no inquiries, no estimates, no nothing. I would say, this is what it's going to cost via email. Like I didn't even have a professional estimate or proposal process. I'd be like, hey, this is what it's going to cost. They'd say, cool. And then I would just immediately start design it until they were happy. And then I would collect the final files. They would pay me, hopefully. And then off they would go. It was really sloppy. It wasn't really put together. Did it work? Yeah. For freelance, like when I was working a full-time job and I didn't have to worry about my business being able to pay bills, yes, that worked perfectly fine. But when I dove into actually relying on my business as my full-time profession, that's where a lot changed for me in this entire process and realizing really quickly that this wasn't going to cut it. It wasn't efficient. My clients were kind of confused most of the time, and it led to the endless revision seventh circle of hell, where it's basically like you don't have anything outlined in your contract stating how many revisions come with it. Everything's done via email or even worse, via phone call. So if you discuss anything on the phone and you don't have something like a AI that's able to record that conversation, or you don't have that conversation recorded, it's your word against theirs, So it's really tough, or vice versa, to kind of have things concrete written down. I got burned really bad doing that. In the early phases of my business, I was actually working with a friend, and it's always the friends that do this to you. Caution and heed this warning because it is so true. But I was working with a friend. I worked with them very early on, pretty much like right after graduation. And we did a lot of cool freelance projects together. I helped them with a lot of fun stuff. And they were pursuing this other thing that they were like developing a software for, and they were trying to put together a brand for it. So they reached out to me via phone call, like we just had like a phone call, video chat, whatever, didn't have it recorded. Discuss terms and conditions. I was like, it's going to be $750. And that was cheap pricing back then. My prices have changed drastically. But at the time, I was like, $750, I'll do this for you. No problem. And they were like, yeah, cool, great. Went through, did the design. They loved the design, but it was like they needed feedback revisions. I was waiting forever on feedback revisions and never heard from them again. And then about a year later, I saw on LinkedIn that they were using that branding for this actual product that they were trying to market. So that really sucked. I never got paid. And it puts a sour taste in your mouth because it's tough when you get into those situations. So very early on, I was lucky and I was like, I am not doing this again. This is ridiculous. My clients are confused. I'm confused. Nobody knows what's going on. And sometimes I'm getting burned over it. So I kind of took a step back, and that's where I really started to look into influential people in the industry like Made by James, Abby Connick, Brands by Robin, CJ Colley, all of these people. And I was kind of just trying to learn how to run a design business because that's not something that you're going to learn in college. That's not something anyone else really could teach you. It's kind of like you have to learn it on the job. But there are these people in the industry that are talking about these real life experiences and sharing their experiences in kind of learning how to run their business and stumbling their way through it, that it really does provide a lot of great insight and things like that. So I really started to lean into kind of listening to them talk about their businesses. And that is where I found out about this super, super, super important onboarding process. So basically what they would discuss and talk about was their client process. At first, I was like, what's a client process? I had no idea that this was such an important thing. And it was early on that I watched one of Made by James' videos, and his whole theme of the whole video was process is profit. And that really stuck with me. And it just kept like turning in my head over and over. I'm just like, process is profit, process is profit. I kept repeating it. And then I was like, wait a second, if I don't have a process and process is profit, I need to do something about that. So that's really where I kind of started to look into the client onboarding process. And I went from a process that was very messy and just very like, hey, do you want to work with me? Okay, it's going to cost this much over email. And then they'd be like, yeah, great, sounds good. And then I just jumped straight into the design, and I was basically setting myself up for failure. It's like I was trying to drive my friends home that night on an empty tank. Okay, and we don't want to do that. So let's talk about onboarding. Basically, when I started with this whole onboarding process, I didn't really know what I was doing. And it's really hard to kind of like watch these professionals in the industry talk about their process and then trying to implement it, because everybody is so different. So it's like, yes, they sell templates online, and that's great. Yes, you could purchase these templates and get onboarding processes or Notion templates or whatever may be that you're looking for. But the problem was I did that, and I went out and I start purchasing these templates. And while I don't regret the purchase at all because it was a great foundation, it's a little bit tough because it makes it seem like it's plug and play. So it's like, okay, I could buy this template, plug it into my current process, and I'll be good to go. It's not really plug and play. There's a little bit of wiring that you have to do in order to get the part to fit. So I bought these templates and I thought I could just like slap it on and I'll be good to go and immediately implement it. It didn't really work that way for me. I started with some Notion templates. I bought some design contracts. I bought some design proposal templates, things like that. I started to begin to implement them, but it was really tough because I really didn't fully understand how to use them. My clients, it was something totally new to them that I had to try to implement in my process, and then began the series of trial and errors that came with the time after I purchased some of these templates. So basically, I got the templates and then I implemented them immediately, and I would just work from there. If I was looking for a specific question, like for example, in the inquiry questionnaire, when I have a brand client come to me and I say, so excited to work with you, go fill out my inquiry questionnaire and we can go from there. Sometimes when you purchase like an inquiry questionnaire from another artist and they're selling like a template, really great start, really great questions in it, but you're gonna find that as you begin to use this with your clients, there are going to be some questions that you need to know that aren't on there. So I really just started writing down, like whenever I would get an inquiry questionnaire back, and I'd go through it and I'd put all their answers into a document and start to visualize the brand strategy and how I can help this client. There definitely were times where there was something that I realized I needed and I didn't have in the inquiry questionnaire. So it's like, write it down on a Post-it note or a sticky note or a piece of paper, whatever. Write it down. And then when you get a chance to go through and revise that questionnaire, add it in and add it in, and on and on and on it went. It is really kind of on the job training. There is no shortcut. There's a lot of places out there that are like, buy this template and you could jump to the front of the line. There is some validity to that. There is. I won't deny that. But there is a big part of it where the template is a great foundation, and it's way easier to build upon something that already exists instead of building it from scratch, right? But there is a lot of work that comes after it. And sometimes it's not really apparent in the way that people market these templates. It's like, just plug it in and you're good to go. It's not. And that's okay. Great foundation, worth the purchase, but just know that there is going to come a little bit more work afterwards to tailor it to meet your specific needs. Update it with your branding, tailor the questions to your specific needs, rewrite some of the questions in your own tone of voice, all that good stuff. So I've been talking a lot about this inquiry questionnaire, but where the heck in the process does this happen? So I'm just going to take you from the beginning all the way through. When I have a client reach out to me and they're interested in working with me, the first thing that I do is I ask them to book a call with me. This is kind of like our first date. And CJ talked about how when you're pitching your design, like when you're actually in the process of pitching your logo design, he likes to do this whole storytelling thing and put together this really nice presentation, because the way he described it was like, if you just show your clients the logo and say, do you like it? It's kind of like asking a stranger to marry you without any prior interaction. They're going to slap you in the face. But if you take them out on a date, you wine and dine them, you date them, and then you ask them to marry you, it's a much different experience. And that's kind of how he tied together presenting logo ideas, because designers struggle with that so much. And that's an entirely different episode in and of itself. But I loved that analogy. And I related that to the onboarding process. Like, I don't want to just jump in and be like, okay, here's pricing. That's kind of like asking somebody, a stranger, to marry you. You're going to get slapped in the face. So I really started to tailor my onboarding process like we're going on a couple first dates. We're getting to know each other. So basically, first interaction, client comes to me, they're interested in working with me. All of the other things, your social presence, putting your work out there, filming reels, that gives a client a really good idea of who you are and helps that trust building phase for them to hand over the keys, like we talked in the previous episode. But once they actually do jump and they want to trust you and they hand over the keys, now you really have to reassure them that they made the right choice and make them feel comfortable and make them feel confident, okay? We don't want to have the client hand over their keys and then we make them feel completely not confident in ourselves because we're not confident in ourselves. We need to do a lot of things to build confidence in ourselves so that our clients can be confident in us. I already said confident way too many times, so let's move on to the next topic. So client comes to me, they want to work with me. I decide, let's have a call. I had put together a little scheduling calendar because this was like a little annoying thing in my business. And if you're really wanting to run your business to mean business and make profit with it and make things super efficient, honestly, this is one of the hidden parts of running a business that I really, really loved unexpectedly, because I thought I was going to hate everything about having to run a business. I'm like shy. I just like to draw. I don't like numbers, don't like any of that crap. So I was like kind of under the assumption that I was going to hate a lot about running my own business. One of the things I love the most about it is all of these little tiny changes and improvements that you can make to just make things better for both you and your client. So back in the beginning days, once I had established having a call initially to get to know each other and decide if we're a good fit, the way that I would do it is they would either text me on Instagram or email me or whatever, hey, I want to work with you. And then I would chat back, okay, great. I'm so excited. Thank you for your interest. When would be a good time to have a consultation call, a free consultation call? And then they would hit me back and be like, oh, awesome. I have this day, this day, this day available. And then I would text them back and be like, okay, well, they don't work, but I'm free this day, and this day. And then they would message back and be like, and it would go on and on and on until we could finally decide on a date. Now, if you look at this from a business efficiency lens, that's terrible. You're wasting so much time on something that time does not need to be wasted on, because if we have this call and kind of decide, maybe they're looking for something that isn't our strong suit, we can either send them somewhere else or just say it's not a good fit. If that happens, we've already wasted an hour, if not more, playing back and forth trying to schedule this call. So that's where I looked at everything and I was like, okay, I'm not doing this. And I found out that you can actually put together like a booking calendar in Google and just send them a link. And it's all of your availability. If you have out of office or you have another meeting or you have a day off or whatever, Google picks up on that and it doesn't let them book that time slot. And I thought that was amazing. So I started to use the Google Calendar booking stuff initially. But then once I pivoted more into like really making my forms polished and fancy, I found this other software called Fill Out. And I use that for like all of my forms. I love it so, so much. And it integrates with Notion. And I use Notion as my project management software. So it was just like the holy grail of forms, because initially when I started, I was using Google Forms as well for all of this initial onboarding stuff. So in the process of making improvements to my business, I was trying to find stuff that integrates with other stuff. So that way, when a client fills out a form, all of their answers automatically just populate in Notion. So I'm taking another step out of the equation. Back when I first started all of that, I didn't have this. So when they would fill out a form, Google form or whatever, I would basically have to download the PDF, open it up on a screen, and then hand type every single solitary answer into a project management software or wherever I needed it to go. Also super inefficient. So I changed that process as soon as I realized it was inefficient. Don't be scared of change. As you start to refine these initial client onboarding processes, don't be afraid to change. It's scary. I lived it. I was there. You get something established and it's working. Maybe it's not working as well as you would want it to, but it's working nonetheless. So you're kind of scared to let that go. Don't be afraid of change, because honestly, clients kind of love that. Like when you're constantly changing and updating your process, and I'm not saying like change it every week because that's a little ridiculous, but every so many months, as you start to gather data and figure out what's working and what's not working, as you continually update your processes and you let your clients know via email or newsletter or wherever you communicate with them, hey, I just wanted to let you know, this is the way that we did it before and this is the way that you're used to, but I changed some things to make everything better for me and my clients, so this is the way we're going to be doing stuff moving forward. They love to see that. They love to see that you're continually working on your business and not just in your business. So that's super important. But getting back to the whole onboarding process, like I said, client reaches out to me, and I know I'm just going over this a million times because I keep getting sidetracked, but that's just how my brain works. Client reaches out to me, I say, let's book a call. And instead of it being a Google booking link, now I send them a fill out booking link because I found out the software I love so much now also has a scheduler that does the same thing that Google Booking does essentially. So I migrated that as well. And I send them that link. I say, great, I'm so excited to potentially work with you. Let's schedule a free consult call, get to know each other, see if we're a good fit, book your meeting here. And then I send them that link. All of the days that I am available are open. Any of the days that I'm not available aren't open. So we don't have to do any more of this back and forth. When are you free? I don't know. When are you free? I don't know. When are you free? And it goes on and on. They find what date works, click on it, book it, and then I get an email saying when they booked it. No more back and forth, no more time wasting. It's super awesome. Now we get to the call. On this call, I like to let them talk initially. So when we hop on a call, and calls are tough for me. I'm very socially anxious. I'm very socially awkward, and I'm an introvert. So it's just kind of like the worst mixed bag for somebody that has to try to talk to people on video calls or what be it. But I really had to learn to restructure my calls because when I first started doing calls, I was like really terrible at it. I had no structure. I didn't know what I wanted to talk about. And it was just kind of me rambling, like I do on this podcast. But it was tough. And clients like really didn't know how to handle it or take things. You don't want to overload them on this initial consult call, but you also don't want to not tell enough about who you are and what you do. So it's really a fine balance that you kind of have to walk. It's like a fine line, but once you start to figure it out, and you will, the more you do it, the better you get at it, and you will figure it out. But initially it is tough. It's a little awkward. That's okay. That's normal and natural. Don't be afraid of it. Just do the best you can. But on this initial call, what I started to do lately as to structure these calls to make them a little bit better and a little bit less awkward, I kind of let the client talk initially. I say, hey, this is awesome. I'm so excited. How are you? And then they let me know. And I basically go into like, just kind of tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your business. Tell me about some of the pain points in your business right now as far as like marketing and branding and things like that are concerned. Tell me some of the pain points in your business that are like actually industry related. Like what's some of the things that you're struggling right now? Because I know it's a weird thing to ask them, especially if you're somebody that's used to working with like blue collar type guys, because it's like plumbing and HVAC and stuff like that. Like what about plumbing is going to possibly help me in this project? But sometimes they'll say some unique things and it helps you gain a better understanding about who they are and what they do. Like one of the times that I was talking with my good client, Drainworks, They were kind of telling me a little bit about their service area, and I'm a farm girl from PA, so like I know nothing about city life, but this client is a plumber in Chicago, like center city Chicago, and they were telling me about how their busy time is like when it rains and they get flooding because in big cities, I guess, like I didn't know this, but there's these big like floodgates that they'll put up around the city. And screw the suburbs, they just care about the city. So they put these floodgates up to protect the city. But then the problem with that is all of that water gets backflowed into the suburb areas. And he was letting me know that they get a lot of calls when there's a lot of rain because all of those suburban areas get flooding, like in their basement or whatever. And they have to go help with the plumbing and sub pumps and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, wow, that's really cool. And if I really wanted to, I could definitely use that somewhere in the design strategy, in the marketing strategy. That's something unique and different that people would remember. I mean, it's certainly stuck in my mind, but I love those kind of conversations to get to learn that kind of stuff. So initially, I kind of just let them talk and I asked them about their business. I asked them about how they are, the pain points and things like that. And then that way, when you let them talk initially, you can tailor the entire conversation to their personality type. And that's a big part of running a business is being able to read personality types and pick up on body language and pick up on tone of voice and all of that kind of stuff. Because having a conversation with client A could be entirely different than having a conversation with client B. They have different ways of communicating. They have different personality types. One of them may be an introvert. One of them may be an extrovert. And all of that kind of determines how we're going to speak with them. So on this initial consult call, I kind of let them talk. I get a reading on their personality, on what they're looking for, on all of the things that I need. And then I can start to tell them a little bit about me. Because if I let them talk and they're like, I don't like mascots or superheroes, I'm not going to waste the entire call showing them a portfolio of mascots and superheroes I designed. I'm going to show them the more corporate stuff and professional, clean, polished, like simple logo, simple text type stuff that I did, right? So we have our initial consult call, get to know each other, go on our first date, and if we decide that this is going to be a good fit, then I will begin to move them into this onboarding process. And basically what that consists of is initially I will send them the inquiry questionnaire if it's a brand related project. I do have clients that come to me that already have a brand created and they're just looking for apparel or a vehicle wrap or whatever. That process is different, but I'm speaking specifically about branding clients in this episode. So they'll come to me, decide to work with me, and then initially I'll send them that inquiry questionnaire that I have completely custom tailored to every single thing that I need. Again, shout out to Fillout. They are amazing. Fillout.com for any type of forms that you would need to do. It's incredible and it integrates with Notion. I could not run my business without Notion, and this isn't paid advertising or anything. I literally have like 5 or 6 followers on this podcast. I'm just saying it because I love these softwares so much and they changed my life so much. So I'm hoping they can do the same for you. And Fillout is free as well as Notion. I ended up having to pay for like the $8 a month subscription or whatever it is. It's super cheap for Notion because I have client portals in Notion that my clients gain access to. And I have to create like guest users every time I invite a client to their portal. With the free plan, you only get 10 guests, but then with the paid plan, I think you get like 100 or something. So I kind of needed it for that. But with the free plan, with the exception of having to invite clients to my portal, I totally could have just rolled on the free plan, and been totally fine. There was no other roadblocks or anything. So a lot of this stuff, it's like really great to use and it's free if you're just starting out and you don't have a huge budget. But first step of business is I get them to fill out that inquiry questionnaire, and that is just a deep dive into their brain about what they are feeling for the brand, kind of the image that they have in their head. And clients sometimes are really bad at describing what they want because they don't know what they want because they're not designers. They didn't go to school, college for 4 years and get trained in this stuff. They don't speak our industry language. That's kind of like expecting us to know how to redo plumbing in an entire house. It's just not going to happen. So what I ended up doing with this inquiry questionnaire is I would ask very, very specific questions about certain things that I know that they know the answer to. So I could start to understand what they want. And it's not like I'm just asking them, okay, so what are you looking for? Because they're never going to be able to tell you. They're not trained in that. And that's okay. That's why we're here. That's why we're here to help them. So if you just ask them, what do you want? They're not going to be able to communicate that clearly. It's so much easier to have them fill out a questionnaire where you are in charge of every question. You have the control of every question. And they're not very difficult answers. It's things about like, how did your business come to be? Is there any unique story behind the name? Things like that you're asking them about their business. You're asking them about what they're looking for. Do you want your brand to be loud or quiet? Do you want your brand to be muted colors or super vibrant colors? Like these things that it's like, yes, no, they know the answer. And that helps you gain an understanding of what they're looking for instead of putting them up on a stage with a mic and being like, what are you looking for? And then having them try to answer. Questionnaires are amazing. Cannot recommend them enough. Once they fill out their inquiry questionnaire, I go through all of their answers and we usually jump back on a call. This is kind of like where the discovery part of the process comes into play. And this is where we will start to kind of work together on the roadmap, all of that good stuff. Once we kind of map out where we want to go, how we're going to tackle this problem, things like that. And I kind of ask them, like, if I have any questions about certain answers, something's unclear to me, this is the time to ask. This is where I get every single step, every single detail that I would need to begin to build their custom project process. So any questions that are unclear, I ask them about it. Anything that they may have wanted to add that they didn't, they have a chance now to tell me. We'll have this 20-minute call, really just kind of go over everything and summarize it all. So that way I have a game plan. Like now I have a game plan to follow. That is a crucial step in this onboarding part of the process. Then from there, once we decide we're going to work together, we decide we're a good fit, they fill out their inquiry questionnaire, we have this other 20-minute call to map out our strategy. This is where I begin to bring them into the legal end of things, the business side of things, all of that kind of stuff. So once all of that foundation is laid, what I go ahead and do at this point is I will provide them with their design contract. I will also provide them with their official project estimate. And I use QuickBooks because it's super easy. And as soon as they approve it, you can convert it into an invoice. And it's professional. It's not just me shouting out a number on email or an Instagram DM and them being like, okay, or just giving you a thumbs up. Like that's not really professional. You're going to want to do something, even if it's just like a PDF proposal or something like that, just to be able to kind of put that polish on it and really make them feel like you're providing a premium service. So I put together their estimate, I put together their contract, and I used to use DocuSign. I have since switched over to Adobe Sign because I had a ton of problems in DocuSign. So if you're somebody starting out and you want to start getting like contracts digitally signed and you already have an Adobe account because likely you're a creative person and you already have the subscription, it just comes with it. So I couldn't really recommend Adobe Sign enough. They do a really good job with that whole digital signing part of the process. So I will go through, put my design contract together, and then get that sent out for signing with Adobe Sign. I also take this time to prepare their official project estimate, and I will send that over as well for approval. Once the contract is signed and the estimate is approved, they are granted access to their custom client portal. Again, I use Notion. I put together these client portals so I can have project cards. I can have every contract or document, estimate, invoice. We have a little chat area where we could chat back and forth. I like to do it in Notion because it's so much easier. I'm already in Notion 100% of the time, every single day. It's easier to communicate with my clients for me in Notion instead of email. Every conversation that we have is tagged to that project. So anytime I pop open a project card, I have our entire conversation right there. I don't have to dig through archaic emails and try to sort by date. And I'm in Google trying to sort by client. And you're working with multiple projects with these clients, so it's like, which project was it? And you're digging through forever. No more of that. I got away from that. I had enough of that. It was like the first couple months in my design business, I was doing that. I was like, I don't enjoy this. I know that there's an easier way. And that's when I found a lot of these amazing influencers and they told me about Notion. And I kind of dove in and just really I bought a couple templates from them initially to get set up. But then I'm revising it literally daily to make it as efficient as possible for my specific needs. So every conversation is attached to that, makes things super easy, super clean. You can access things quickly. You're not wasting time digging through stuff. So I really love it for that. They're granted access to this custom client portal. And this is where I can start to begin beyond the onboarding phase, actually working with the project. So the reason why I wanted to talk about all of this stuff initially is it makes you really seem like you have your shit together. It makes you seem professional. It makes you seem prepared. It's not like you're showing up on the job scrambling with pens and papers and your hair's disheveled and it's like you can't get your stuff together. It is like you show up, you are dressed to impress. You have everything together. You have that like hold your head high and shoulders out type deal. So it really does make a big difference. And once you're able to implement a process like this, not only does it make your life a whole heckin' lot easier, you can charge more for it. You're not just a designer anymore that is spitballing prices via email, no onboarding process, no beginning introductions and things like that. And you're just jumping right into design and just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And you don't know what they want and they don't know what they want. So it's going to turn into this nightmare of just endless revisions and client from hell and all of this awful stuff. If you have this onboarding process really dialed in and you have that questionnaire and you have those initial calls, you are going to understand really, really well what they need and what they're looking for. And when you actually get to your design process, it's going to make things a lot easier. You're not going to have as many revisions. Everybody's going to be on the same page. They're going to trust you. They're going to understand that you're doing your best and all that stuff. It's not just like, okay, here's the price. Okay, great. And you jump into design and you're showing them ideas that they never discussed, or, it's like not their style. Just like I had mentioned, having that call with the one client, he's like, I don't like superheroes and mascots. Okay. If I didn't have this onboarding process and we didn't have that conversation, what would have happened? I would have jumped into design. I would have designed mascots and superheroes. I would have spent 60 to 80 hours doing so and then showed them and they would have been like, I don't want a superhero or a mascot. Why would I do that when I could spend 20 minutes on a video call or a phone call and I could ask them what they're looking for and let them tell me about them? That 20 minutes saves me 80 hours down the line. So this stuff is super important. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make your clients' lives easier. Everybody's going to be happy through the entire process. You're not going to get yourself into an awkward pinch where it's like, I don't like any of this. And you're like, well, I don't know what to do. This onboarding process literally sets you up for success. So go out there, put together a little form for yourself, whether it's a Google form or a fill out form or literally whatever you want to use. You could even use DocuSign if you really want. Yes, when I first started my business, I was doing my inquiry questionnaires via DocuSign and I had to put together this PDF with all of the questions that I wanted, export the PDF, and then draw a box for 40 questions every time I sent one. It was awful. Then I learned you could put together templates. So I did that and it was less awful, but it was still awkward and annoying because I was copying and pasting answers out of the questionnaire to get it where I needed to go. Swapped over to Google Forms, and that was a whole heckin' lot better. I really enjoyed that. And then once I found Fill Out, I was like, this is just the piece de resistance because it integrates with Notion. Everything just looks so clean and like, I don't know, it's nice. It's like designery. I love it. But that's what I use now. Getting all those questions that you need, inquiry questionnaire, put together a nice little proposal PDF for yourself, or start a QuickBooks account so you could put together estimates. I'm sure there's like a million other softwares out there as far as like project estimates and things like that where you can get them digitally approved, but get something like that started. Put together a contract for yourself. It is super, super, super important. And I could honestly make an entire episode about design contracts because that's one of the hiccups in my design business. There's not a ton of information about them online. And the design contract templates are far and few between. At least a year ago, when I started looking to integrate like a contract in my process, things have changed a lot. And I know there's a lot more designers kind of sharing their design contracts that you could purchase them or they let you download them for free. So I'm sure that that has changed a lot, but it was really tough when I started and I didn't know what I was doing and resources were kind of scarce. So that was really one of those things. It was just like, I had to get burned and then I put it in my contract and then I had to get burned and I put it in my contract and so on and so forth. And you kind of build it like that. But I will make an episode kind of talking about design contracts just because they are really important and I didn't find a ton of information on them. So I think it would be helpful just to kind of talk about my experience and things like that. But yeah, that is my onboarding process. And then once they're granted access to that client portal, we move into project stuff. You know, the estimate is approved. I take deposits now. That is also super, super important because what I was doing is I was booking these thousands of dollar jobs and not taking deposits or midway payments. And sometimes these brand projects took me 3 to 4 months, sometimes 5 to 6 if the client wasn't responsive. Waiting 6 months for that payment of a couple $1,000s when you have bills due is really stressful. So I ended up changing my process and now I start taking deposits 50% upfront, 50% on completion, or for my more budget conscious clients, I allow them to do a 25% upfront, 25% when we're halfway through the project, and then 50% on completion just to help them break it up a little bit better. But taking deposits is a game changer, not just because you're covering yourself and accounting for the work that you are going to be doing if these projects do take months to complete, but also you can still get your bills paid when you have $1,000 projects that you're working on and you're just waiting until the end to get the full amount. That's really tough for getting bills paid. So it spaces things out for your client to make it easier on them, but it also spaces things out for you so that you're able to comfortably continue to pay bills and have that steady revenue stream. So that's super important. I take deposits, and then once that deposit is paid, we are officially ready to rock and roll into the stanking good project process. So that's kind of where we just dive in. We go through the actual brand discovery phase. We go through the brand identity creation phase. We go through revisions. We do all that fun stuff. And I will also make an episode about what that step of the process looks like because that's where all of the magic happens. I love that part of the process. It's my favorite after we get through all of this initial onboarding stuff. But that's what it looks like to get your client to the car safely. That's what it looks like to get your client onboarded. And it is super, super important. I can't recommend it enough. It sets you up for success and it sets your client up for success. You know, we want to make sure that this experience is as great as it possibly could be for them. So this really does help you do that. It helps you seem much more professional, lets you charge more for your service because you have this as a part of your process and all of that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I cannot wait to catch you in the next episode. Bye.